She waited 10 years for this moment. 10 years of living in darkness, of trusting the sound of the voice of the woman she loved, of navigating her home by touch and memory. When the bandages were finally ready to come off, she expected her first sight to be the loving, smiling face of her wife. Instead, the first thing her newly cured eyes saw was her wife, in her own living room, sharing a deep, passionate kiss with their next-door neighbor. We all fear betrayal. We worry that the people closest to us, the ones we depend on, might not be who they seem. We build our lives on a foundation of trust, but what happens when that foundation is shattered? What happens when the miracle you prayed for reveals a nightmare you never suspected? Sarah was blind for a decade. After a tragic accident, she relied on her wife, Carol, for everything. She believed in their bond, in their shared life, in the love that Carol described to her every day. Until a new experimental surgery gave her back the world, only to show her that her entire world was a lie. This is a story about the ultimate deception. It is about a woman who gained the precious gift of sight, only to realize she had been truly blind in ways she never could have imagined. Today we will uncover just how deep this betrayal went, what was hidden in the shadows of her blindness, and what happens when the person you trusted most is finally seen for who she truly is. If you believe Sarah deserved the truth, please take a moment to give this video a like. It truly helps our community grow and share these stories. What would you have done if you were in her place? We would love to know. Tell us your name and where you are watching from in the comments section below. And if this is your first time joining us, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell. That way you will never miss another story from our channel. Now let us begin. The story of Sarah and Carol starts not with the light, but in the comfortable, familiar darkness that Sarah had known for 10 long years. For 10 years, Sarah's world was made of touch, sound, and scent. It was a world she had meticulously mapped in her mind. She knew the exact number of steps from the bed to the bathroom door. She knew the smooth, cool feel of the granite countertop and the small chip on the edge of her favorite mug. Her life was defined not by what she saw but by what she felt. And the center of that world, the voice that guided her, was Carol. Carol was her eyes, her rock, her devoted partner. They had been together for 15 years, the last 10 spent navigating Sarah's blindness after the accident. It was Carol who read the mail aloud, her voice painting pictures of bills and letters from friends. It was Carol who described the colors of the sunset, her words a substitute for the light Sarah could no longer see. "It's a deep orange tonight, honey," Carol would say, her hand warm on Sarah's, with streaks of purple right above the trees. "It's beautiful." Sarah would smile, squeezing that hand, imagining the colors based on memories from a decade prior. She trusted Carol's descriptions. She trusted Carol's heart. Her wife was her anchor in a world that had become an endless night. In the last few years, their neighbor Evelyn had become a frequent presence in their home. Evelyn lived alone in the house to their left. She was, in Carol's words, a lifesaver. "Evelyn is stopping by," Carol would announce, her voice bright. "She's going to help me with the garden. You don't mind, do you, Sarah? It's too much for me to handle alone." "Of course not," Sarah would say, sitting in her favorite armchair, listening to the sounds of their laughter drifting in from the backyard. Evelyn had a lower, quieter laugh than Carol's. Sarah pictured her as kind, perhaps a bit lonely, always willing to lend a hand. Evelyn often brought over homemade bread or soup. "You two are such a wonderful couple," Evelyn said once, her voice close as she handed Sarah a warm bowl. "Carol is she is amazing. The way she cares for you. It's inspiring." "I am the lucky one," Sarah had replied, feeling Carol's hand rest on her shoulder. "We're both lucky," Carol said, and Sarah heard the smile in her voice. Life continued in this steady, predictable rhythm. Sarah's days were structured. She listened to audiobooks, she practiced her piano, she talked on the phone with her sister. Carol handled the visual parts of life, the shopping, the driving, the bills. It was a system that worked. But underneath the routine, Sarah held a kernel of hope, a tiny, fragile thing she rarely spoke of. She missed seeing. She missed the simple act of looking at Carol's face. She missed seeing the blue of the sky. The hope was fragile because every doctor she had consulted over the past 10 years had said the same thing. The damage to her optic nerves was too severe. It was permanent. Then everything changed. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. Carol was out, having told Sarah she was running errands and then helping Evelyn fix a leaky faucet. Sarah had navigated the phone call herself, her fingers finding the buttons by memory. It was a new doctor, someone her sister had heard about, a specialist in experimental regenerative therapies. "We've reviewed your file, Sarah," the doctor, a man with a calm, steady voice, explained. "A new surgical procedure has been approved for trials. It's very new, but the results we are seeing in patients with your specific type of nerve damage are promising. Extremely promising." Sarah's hand trembled, the phone slick in her palm. "Promising? What does that mean?" "It means there is a chance," the doctor said. "Not a guarantee, but a significant chance. We are talking about a 70% success rate for restoring partial to full vision." 70%. The number echoed in her head. After a decade of 0%, 70 felt like infinity. When Carol returned home hours later, Sarah was still sitting in the same spot, the phone quiet in her lap. The house was silent. "Sarah? Honey." Carol's voice sounded flustered, out of breath. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Evelyn's faucet was a nightmare. Then the grocery store was packed. Are you all right? You're so quiet." Sarah heard the jingle of keys, the soft thud of bags on the kitchen counter. She turned her head toward the sound of her wife. "I got a call today," Sarah said, her voice shaking just slightly. "From a new doctor. A specialist." She heard Carol's movements stop. The silence stretched. "A doctor?" Carol finally asked. "What about?" "A surgery, Carol," Sarah said, and now the tears she had been holding back began to fall. He said there's a chance. A 70% chance. He thinks he can fix it. He thinks I might be able to see again." She waited for the cheer, the exclamation of joy, the sound of Carol rushing to embrace her. Instead there was a long, heavy pause. In the silence, Sarah heard a strange, faint sound. The click of a door latch. "Honey?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowing. "Did Evelyn come in with you?" "What? No," Carol said, her voice suddenly close. She knelt by Sarah's chair, taking her hands. Carol's hands were cold. "Sarah, that's incredible. Wow." Her voice was high, strained. Sarah interpreted it as shock. It was shocking news after all. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted, clinging to her wife's hands. "What if it doesn't work? What if it's the 2%? Or what if it makes things worse?" "It won't," Carol said, rubbing her thumbs over Sarah's knuckles. "It won't. You have to do it, honey. Of course you have to do it." Her voice was gaining strength, sounding more like the supportive Carol she knew. "You deserve to see again. We deserve this." "We do," Sarah whispered, leaning forward, finding her wife's shoulder and resting her head there. "I want to see you. That's the first thing I want to see. Your face." Carol's arms wrapped around her, but Sarah felt a stiffness in the embrace, a tension that hadn't been there before. Carol held her tightly, almost too tightly, her chin resting on top of Sarah's head. "Of course, honey," Carol whispered into her hair. "My face. That's what you'll see." Over the next few weeks, the house was filled with a nervous energy. The surgery was scheduled. Carol became a whirlwind of activity. She was supportive, handling all the paperwork, driving Sarah to the preoperative appointments. She was the perfect, devoted wife. But Sarah, who had spent a decade honing her other senses, noticed things. She noticed how Carol's phone, which used to be left on the counter, was now always in her pocket. She noticed how Carol's errands with Evelyn became more frequent and longer. "Just getting everything sorted before your surgery," Carol explained. "Evelyn is helping me prepare the house for your recovery, making sure it's spotless for you." "That's so kind of her," Sarah said. The night before the surgery, Sarah was restless. Carol made her tea and sat on the edge of the bed. "Try to sleep," Carol said softly, her hand brushing hair from Sarah's forehead. "I keep thinking about, what if it works?" Sarah whispered. "What will the world look like? Will you look like I remember?" "I'm 10 years older," Carol chuckled, but the sound was thin. "We both are. But you see, it will be wonderful. I love you, Carol." "I love you too," Carol replied. She kissed Sarah's forehead. "Now sleep." Carol left the room, closing the door softly. Sarah lay in the darkness, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and exhilarating hope. She was on the edge of a new world. She was about to get her old one back. She eventually drifted into a restless sleep, unaware that in the guest bedroom down the hall, Carol was not sleeping. She was staring at her phone at a text message glowing in the dark. The message was from Evelyn. It read, "What are we going to do?" Carol typed back, "He said 70%. Might not even work. We wait. We do nothing." She deleted the exchange as she always did and stared at the ceiling, her own heart pounding with a different kind of terror. The carefully constructed world she had built in the shadows of her wife's blindness was about to be flooded with light. The day of the surgery was a blur of antiseptic smells, the rustle of sterile gowns, and the kind, reassuring voices of the medical staff. Sarah's world, already dark, was made even darker by the anesthesia. She held on to one thought, one image she had constructed in her mind. Carol's face as she remembered it from 10 years ago, smiling, her eyes bright. That would be her anchor. Carol was there when she woke up. Sarah could feel her presence, hear her voice, which was thick with emotion. "She's waking up," Carol said, her voice trembling. "Sarah? Can you hear me?" It was the doctor. "Yes," Sarah whispered. Her mouth was dry. Her head felt heavy. And her eyes were covered in thick, soft bandages. "The surgery went perfectly," the doctor said, his voice calm and professional. "We have done everything we can. The rest is up to your body. We need to let the nerves heal, to let the inflammation go down. You will wear these bandages for 5 days. No peeking." 5 days, Sarah repeated. Felt like another lifetime. "I'll be right here," Carol said, her hand finding Sarah's. "I'm not going anywhere." The next 5 days were the longest of Sarah's life. Carol was true to her word, mostly. She stayed by Sarah's side, reading to her, helping her with meals, guiding her through the disorienting post-operative haze. But Sarah's senses, sharpened by a decade of darkness and now heightened by the anticipation, continued to pick up static, small disturbances in the rhythm of their life. Carol's phone vibrated often. When it did, Carol would abruptly stop reading. "Just a moment, honey," she'd say, her voice moving away as she left the room. Sarah would hear the faint, urgent murmur of her voice from the hallway or the patio. When she returned, her energy was always scattered. "Who was that?" Sarah asked once. "Just Evelyn," Carol replied, her voice a little too bright. "Checking in. She's so worried about you. She's been a rock." "She's a good friend," Sarah agreed, settling back against the pillows. On the 3rd day, Sarah heard the front door open and close softly. She assumed it was Carol, perhaps checking the mail. But minutes later, she heard Carol's voice coming from the kitchen. "Sarah? Need anything? I'm making tea." Sarah frowned. "I thought you just went out." There was a pause. "No, honey. I've been right here. You must have been dreaming." Sarah knew she had not been dreaming. She knew the sound of the front door. But she let it go. The drugs, perhaps. The anticipation. It was making her jumpy. The 5th day finally arrived. The doctor had agreed to come to their home to remove the bandages. He said it was better for the patient to be in a familiar, comfortable setting for the first light. Sarah sat on the sofa in her living room. She could feel the morning sun streaming through the windows, a warmth on her skin she had always loved. Today she might see that sunlight. She heard the doctor arrive, his voice mixing with Carol's. "All right, Sarah," the doctor said, his voice close. He smelled of soap and coffee. "This is the moment. Now I want to manage expectations. It may not be instant. It might be blurry. It might just be shapes and light. Your brain will need time to learn how to process these signals again. It's been a decade." "I understand," Sarah said, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "Carol, if you could dim the lights just a bit," the doctor said. "We don't want to overwhelm her." Sarah heard the click of the dimmer switch. She heard Carol move, her footsteps soft on the rug. She heard her settle on the armchair to her left. Sarah could pinpoint her by the sound of her breathing. "Okay," the doctor said. "Here we go. I'm going to cut the tape first. You'll feel a slight pull." Sarah held her breath. She felt the tape release, the soft pull at her temples. The doctor began to unwind the layers of gauze. With each rotation, the muffled sounds of the room became slightly clearer. She was terrified. What if it was still black? What if the 70% had failed? "I'm going to remove the final pads now, Sarah," the doctor said. "Keep your eyes closed until I tell you. Now, open them. Slowly." Sarah's eyelids fluttered. They felt heavy, stuck together. She forced them open. It was blinding. A painful, overwhelming flood of white light. It was chaos. It was too much. "Ah," she cried out, squeezing her eyes shut again. "It's okay," the doctor's voice was gentle. "That's normal. The light. Your pupils are reacting. Just try again. Very slowly. Let your eyes adjust." Sarah tried again. She squinted, forcing her eyes open into tiny slits. The white resolved. It broke apart into shapes. Colors. She saw a large, dark shape in front of her. It was blurry, like looking through frosted glass. She blinked and the shape sharpened. It was a man. He was wearing glasses. He had kind eyes. "Doctor," she whispered. The doctor smiled. A real, visible smile. "Welcome back, Sarah. I see you. I can see you," she breathed. It was a miracle. Tears welled up, blurring the image again, but these were tears of joy. She could see. He saw the room. The sofa she was sitting on. It was blue. She had always thought it was gray. The painting on the wall, the grain of the wood on the coffee table. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of information. "Carol," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She turned her head to the left, to the chair where she had heard her wife sit down. The chair was empty. "Carol," Sarah asked again, confused. Where was she? He wanted to see Carol. "I'm right here, honey." Carol's voice came from the other side of the room, near the kitchen entryway. It sounded strained. Sarah turned. She looked toward the voice. And that is when her new world, the one she had prayed for, shattered. He saw her. Her hair was different, shorter than Sarah remembered, and lighter. Her face. It was older, yes, but it was her. She was not alone. Standing with her, backed against the wall, was Evelyn. Sarah's brain struggled to catch up. He was seeing Carol. He was seeing Evelyn. Why was Evelyn here? Why did she look so frightened? And why was she in Carol's arms? Sarah watched, frozen, as the scene before her burned itself into her memory as her very first sight. Carol was kissing Evelyn. It was not a peck on the cheek. It was not a friendly greeting. Carol's hand was tangled in Evelyn's hair, and Evelyn's hands were on Carol's waist. Their mouths were pressed together in a way that left no room for interpretation. It was hungry, it was familiar, it was the kiss of lovers. The room, which moments before had been a joyous explosion of color, went silent. The doctor, sensing a shift, turned to see what Sarah was looking at. He said nothing. The sound that escaped Sarah's throat was not a word. It was a small, wounded noise. The sound broke the spell. Carol and Evelyn sprang apart, their faces a mask of pure, unfiltered panic. Carol's eyes, the eyes Sarah had dreamed of seeing, were wide with horror. Evelyn looked like she was about to be sick. "Sarah," Carol whispered, taking a step forward, her hands raised as if to ward off a blow. "Sarah, you can see." Sarah's gaze did not waver. She looked at her wife, the woman who had cared for her, lied to her, and betrayed her. She looked at the neighbor, the helpful friend. She looked at the guilt etched on their faces, a detail she could now see with perfect, heartbreaking clarity. The doctor cleared his throat, a sharp, uncomfortable sound. "Sarah, is everything all right? How is your vision?" Sarah finally tore her gaze from the two women. She looked at the doctor, this kind stranger who had performed a miracle. He had given her back her sight. He had shown her the truth. "Yes, doctor," Sarah said, and her voice was a hollow echo of itself, a dead thing in the new bright room. I can see everything." The silence that followed Sarah's words was heavier than any darkness she had ever known. It pressed down on them, thick and suffocating. The air, which moments ago had been electric with the miracle of sight, was now poisoned with the stench of betrayal. Carol stood frozen by the kitchen door, her face pale. The vibrant color Sarah had just discovered, the red of Carol's lipstick, the blue of her sweater, now seemed garish, like paint on a tomb. Evelyn, the neighbor, was already moving, sidling toward the front door, her eyes averted, refusing to look at Sarah. I should go," Evelyn stammered, her hand fumbling for the doorknob. I came to see if it worked." "It worked, Evelyn," Sarah said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. It was the only way she could keep from shattering into a million pieces. The ability to see this woman's face, the flushed cheeks, the guilty flicker in her eyes, was a curse. "You can go." Evelyn didn't need to be told twice. The door opened and clicked shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet room. Now they were three. Sarah, the doctor, and the woman who was her wife. The doctor, a man trained for medical emergencies, was utterly unprepared for this. He packed his bag with quiet, efficient movements. "Sarah," he said gently, keeping his back to Carol. "Your vision will continue to sharpen. You will experience eye strain, headaches. That's normal. Your brain is relearning." He placed a small bottle of eye drops on the coffee table. "Use these every 4 hours. I will call you tomorrow to check in. Please, call me if you need anything. Anything at all." Sarah understood his message. He wasn't just talking about her eyes. "Thank you, doctor," she managed to say. "For everything." He nodded, gave Carol a look of profound disappointment and let himself out. The front door clicked shut for the second time. Now they were two. Sarah stared at Carol. She was seeing her, really seeing her for the first time in 10 years. The memories she had held on to were of a younger woman. This Carol was different. There were fine lines around her eyes, a tightness in her mouth that Sarah had never heard. And she was a stranger. This person standing in her living room was a complete stranger. "Sarah," Carol began, her voice a desperate plea. "Honey, please. Let me explain." "Explain." Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. She was afraid that if she raised it she would start screaming and never stop. It's not what it looks like," Carol stammered, the oldest, weakest lie in the book. The absurdity of the statement, spoken to a woman who had been blind moments before, was almost comical. "It's not what it looks like?" Sarah repeated. She felt a strange, cold laugh bubble up in her chest. "That's what you're going with? That's your first defense? I have been blind for 10 years, Carol. What it looks like is the only thing I have right now. And what it looks like, what I saw, was you kissing our neighbor. It happened," Carol said, tears welling in her eyes. But Sarah could see them now. She could see them for what they were. They were not tears of remorse. They were tears of being caught. "When?" Sarah asked. "When did it just happen?" "Today. 5 minutes ago." Carol's silence was the answer. "How long, Carol?" Sarah demanded, her voice finally rising. The new, bright colors of the room seemed to vibrate with her anger. "It's complicated," Carol whispered, looking down at the floor. "How long?" Carol flinched. "A few years," she admitted, her voice so low Sarah barely heard it. "On and off. About 3 years." 3 years. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. 3 years of helpful Evelyn. 3 years of errands. 3 years of sitting in her armchair, listening to their laughter from the garden. 3 years of her wife reading her letters, describing sunsets, guiding her hand, all off at a lie. 3 years, Sarah repeated. The room was starting to spin. The sensory overload, the sight, the shock, the betrayal, was too much. Her head throbbed. "Sarah, you don't understand." Carol insisted, taking a step closer. I was so lonely. You were gone in a way. I was a caregiver, not a wife. Best. Evelyn was here. He understood. She saw me. She saw you, Sarah said. And I didn't. The cruelty of it, the specific targeted nature of the betrayal, was what broke her. They had used her blindness. They had hidden in it. They had used her home, her life, as their stage, confident that the star of the show could never see the performance. You were lonely, Sarah said, testing the word. So you brought her into our home. You had her help you in the garden. You let her bring me soup. You let me thank her. You let me think she was my friend. I never wanted to hurt you. Carol cried. You just didn't want me to see, Sarah countered, her voice ice. She looked around the living room. Her living room. But it wasn't hers. It was a place she had never truly seen. The blue sofa. The new lamp in the corner. She didn't remember that lamp. The photographs on the mantelpiece. She squinted, walking closer. She saw a photo of herself and Carol from before the accident. They were young, smiling. Next to it was a photo she didn't recognize. It was Carol and Evelyn, arms around each other, smiling at a beach. When was this? Sarah asked, picking up the frame. Her hand was shaking. Carol's face went white. That was from a trip last year. I told you I was visiting my sister. You went to the beach? With her. Sarah, please sit down. You're pale. The doctor said you need to rest. Don't touch me. Sarah recoiled as Carol reached for her. The newness of her sight made everything sharp, everything painful. She saw the lie in the way Carol's eyes darted away. She saw the deceit in the tremble of her lip. For 10 years she had relied on Carol's voice, a voice that had been smooth, reassuring, and utterly false. Now she had her eyes and they showed her the unfiltered truth. All those times you left, Sarah said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening speed. The errands. The leaky faucet. The front door I heard this week when you swore you were in the kitchen. That was her, wasn't it? She was here. In our house. While I was in the bedroom recovering. Carol didn't have to answer. The guilt on her face was a confession. Get out, Sarah whispered. What? Get out. Sarah's voice was raw. Get out of my house. Sarah, you're not thinking straight, Carol pleaded, trying to regain control. You're in shock. Your eyes. You need me to help you. You need me. Need you. Sarah looked at the woman she had loved. I needed you for 10 years. I needed a partner. What I had apparently was a liar. What I see right now is a stranger. I don't know who you are. Get out. This is my house too. Carol's voice hardened. The tears vanished, replaced by a sudden defensive anger. You can't just throw me out. We built this life together. No, Sarah said, walking to the front door and pulling it open. The light from the hallway was bright, making her wince, but she didn't care. You built that life. The one with her. Now go and live in it. But you won't do it here. Carol stared at her, her expression unreadable. For a moment Sarah thought she would refuse. But then Carol's gaze hardened into something cold, something Sarah had never heard but could now see perfectly. It was resentment. Fine, Carol snapped. She grabbed her keys from the bowl by the door and her purse from the floor. She didn't pack a bag. He just walked. She paused at the doorway, turning back to Sarah. You may have your sight back, Sarah, she said, her voice dripping with a bitterness that chilled Sarah to the bone. But you have no idea what you're doing. You're still the same helpless person you were yesterday. You'll be begging me to come back by tomorrow. She pulled the door shut and Sarah was alone. She stood in the center of her living room, her new eyes taking in every detail. The room was bright, full of color. And it was empty. She looked at her hands, turning them over. She saw the lines on her palms, her short, clean fingernails. She saw the wedding ring on her left hand. Suddenly felt incredibly heavy, a cold, dead weight. She stumbled to the armchair, the one she had always sat in, the blind chair. She collapsed into it, the new visual world spinning around her. The doctor was right. Her head was pounding, a sharp pain behind her eyes. She closed them, seeking the familiar comfort of the darkness. But the darkness was gone. Even with her eyes shut, she could see it. Burned onto the inside of her eyelids, the first sharp, clear image her brain had processed in a decade. Her wife. Kissing her neighbor. The miracle she had prayed for had become her own personal hell. She had gained her sight, only to lose everything she had ever held dear. Sarah did not know how long she sat in that chair. Hours perhaps. The bright morning light she had just seen for the first time shifted, turning warmer, then dimmer as the afternoon wore on. She sat with her eyes closed, but the images would not stop. The betrayal replayed in her mind, now in vivid color. Carol's hand in Evelyn's hair. The shock on their faces. The photograph on the mantelpiece. He was right. The silence of the house was absolute. Carol was not coming back. Not today anyway. The finality of Carol's parting words echoed in the room. You'll be begging me to come back. A new cold anger began to replace the shock. Helpless. Carol still saw her as helpless. As blind. Even now, with her eyes wide open, Carol believed she was weak. No, Sarah whispered to the empty room. Not anymore. She forced herself to stand. Her legs were stiff, her head ached, but she was driven by a new, desperate need. She needed to see. She needed to know what else she had been missing. She began to walk through her own home as if she were a stranger, because she was. For 10 years this house had been a map of textures. Now it was a museum of a life she hadn't known. She ran her hand along the wallpaper in the hallway. He had always thought it was a simple cream color. She saw now that it had a faint golden floral pattern. It was beautiful. And she had never known. He walked into the kitchen. The room she knew by the smooth, cold granite and the scent of coffee was now a visual landscape. The cabinets were a deep cherry wood. The tile backsplash had intricate little designs. And the kitchen window. She walked to it, the window Carol and Evelyn had been standing near. She looked out into her backyard. For 10 years Carol had described it. The roses are blooming, honey. They're a lovely red. The roses were lovely. But what held Sarah's attention was the path. A small, worn track in the grass, leading directly from her back patio to the gap in the fence. The gap that led directly to Evelyn's backyard. It was a path made by thousands of footsteps. A path worn down by daily secret visits. She was a rock, Sarah muttered, repeating Carol's words. Helping in the garden. It was all a lie. The whole world Carol had built for her, the descriptions, the stories, it was all curated. It was a fiction designed to keep Sarah comfortable in her darkness, while Carol lived a different life in the light. She opened the refrigerator, squinting at the sudden brightness. It was filled with food. But she saw things she didn't recognize. A brand of sparkling water she had never tried. A container of leftovers that didn't smell like anything Carol usually cooked. It smelled like the bread Evelyn used to bring over. They were sharing meals. They were sharing everything. Her anger grew, a steady, burning flame. She went to the bedroom she had shared with Carol. It looked just as she had imagined, mostly. The large bed, the wooden dresser. But on Carol's bedside table next to a lamp was her cell phone. In her rage, Carol had forgotten it. Sarah stared at it. For 10 years, a cell phone had been a useless brick to her, a device she couldn't navigate. But now it was a box of answers. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She pushed the power button. The screen lit up. It was locked. A passcode. He tried to think. What would it be? Their anniversary? She typed in the date. Incorrect passcode. She tried her birthday. Incorrect passcode. She tried Carol's birthday. Incorrect passcode. Of course. It wouldn't be that simple. She was about to give up when her eyes landed on the back of the phone. Tucked into the edge of the phone case was a tiny folded slip of paper. Carol, who had managed a 3-year affair, had committed the most careless of mistakes. She had written it down. Sarah's fingers fumbled as she unfolded the paper. On it were 6 numbers. He typed them in. The phone unlocked. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt her chest. She was flooded with guilt. This was a violation of privacy. But that feeling was immediately erased by the memory of the kiss. Privacy had been violated 3 years ago. She opened the text messages. The screen was a sea of names, but one stood out right at the top. Evelyn. She clicked it. The screen filled with a history so long she had to scroll for minutes to find the beginning. It was not just on and off. It was constant. Every single day. I'll be over as soon as she's asleep. Are you kidding? The doctor said 70%. Might not even work. Stop panicking. This was from the night before the surgery. She's in the shower. I can talk for a minute. I'm getting her tea. She has no idea. She's just so trusting. Sarah had to sit down on the bed. She felt sick. The casual cruelty, the way they spoke of her. She was not a person. She was a problem. An obstacle. A thing to be managed while they lived their real lives. She scrolled down further and further into years of messages. I can't take this anymore, see. I feel so guilty. This was Evelyn 2 years ago. Guilty? Carol had replied. We are happy. She's happy. She doesn't know any different. What she doesn't know can't hurt her. Now are you coming over or not? What she doesn't know. Sarah said aloud. She kept scrolling, but the messages began to change. About 6 months ago the tone shifted. It was no longer just about the affair. It was about money. Evelyn, she has that inheritance money just sitting there. She can't even see the bank statements. Carol, I know. I've been moving small amounts. Household expenses. She'd never know the difference. Evelyn, we could really do it. Buy that place by the lake. We'd have enough to start over. Carol, we have to be careful. Just a little longer. It's almost enough. Sarah dropped the phone as if it had burned her. It wasn't just a betrayal. It wasn't just an affair. It was a plan. They were stealing from her. They were planning to drain her inheritance. Money her parents had left her, money she had earmarked for her and Carol's future for their retirement, and leave. They were going to leave her blind and broke. The sudden light, the surgery, that was the complication. Her cure had ruined their plan. The headache behind Sarah's eyes exploded into a full-blown migraine. She stumbled to the bathroom, her new vision swimming. She fumbled with the cabinet, her coordination still clumsy. She saw bottles, colors, shapes. For 10 years she knew her pills by the shape of the bottle. Now she had to read the labels. She squinted, her eyes watering from the strain. Ibuprofen. She dry swallowed 2 pills, leaning her head against the cool tile of the bathroom wall. The entire foundation of her life was gone. The woman she loved was a thief. The friend she trusted was her partner. The home she loved was a crime scene. She thought of Carol's last words. "You'll be begging me to come back." Carol hadn't been threatening her. She had been counting on it. She was counting on Sarah to be so overwhelmed by the new world of sight, so lost and helpless, that she would have no choice but to forgive her. She would come back and they would continue, only now they would have to be more careful. Sarah stood up straight, looking at her own reflection in the mirror for the first time. She saw a woman of 45. Her hair was longer than she realized, with strands of gray she had never known about. Her eyes, the eyes that had just been given back to her, were red-rimmed and filled with a pain so deep it startled her. But they were also filled with fire. "Helpless," Sarah said to her own reflection. "No, I'm not helpless. I am not blind." She finally knew what she was seeing. And she knew exactly what she had to do. She walked back to the bedroom, picked up the phone and found the number for her sister. She dialed, her fingers pressing the visual numbers on the screen. Her sister picked up on the second ring. "Sarah. Oh my God. Did it work? Can you see?" Sarah took a deep, shuddering breath. "Yes, Kate. It worked." She paused. "I need you to come over. And I need you to give me the name of your lawyer. The best one you know." Sarah's sister Kate arrived in under an hour. When Sarah opened the door, she saw her sister's face for the first time in 10 years. Kate looked older just as she did, but her eyes were the same, kind, sharp, and now filled with concern. "Sarah." Kate breathed, her hands flying to her mouth. You're looking at me." She pulled Sarah into a fierce hug. For a moment, Sarah just clung to her, the solid, real presence of her sister a ballast in her spinning world. "It worked," Kate said, pulling back, tears streaming down her face. "It's a miracle." "It's not," Sarah said, her voice hard. "Come inside. I have to show you something." She led Kate to the kitchen, sat her down at the table and placed Carol's phone in front of her. "Read," she said. Kate's confusion turned to shock, then to a quiet, cold rage as she scrolled through the messages. He read about the affair, the lies, the beach trip. Then she got to the money. She's been stealing from you?" Kate looked up, her face pale. "They were planning to leave you?" "They were planning to leave a blind woman," Sarah corrected, her voice brittle. "They were going to drain my inheritance and vanish. My surgery ruined their timeline." Kate slammed the phone down on the table. That monster. And Evelyn. I never trusted that woman. She was always too helpful." "I have your lawyer's number," Sarah said, holding up a piece of paper. "I'm calling him. Now." "Yes," Kate said, her expression hardening. "Yes, you are. And I'm going to the bank. Right now. You said the inheritance is in a joint account, right? From before the accident." Sarah nodded. "I think so. Carol always handled the statements." "Not anymore," Kate said, grabbing her keys. "We're going to freeze that account. We are going to lock her out of everything. He wants helpless. We'll see who's helpless when the money stops." While Kate sped to the bank, Sarah made the call. She spoke to the lawyer, a man named Mr. Harrison. She explained the situation in a calm, flat voice that surprised even herself. She spoke of the decade of blindness, the miracle surgery, the first sight, the phone, the financial records. "This is extraordinary," Mr. Harrison said, his professional calm clearly shaken. "And despicable. First, your sister is doing the right thing. Freezing the joint account is paramount. Second, I need you to gather more screenshots of those messages. Any paper statements you can find. Carol's defense will be that you are unstable. That the surgery has made you paranoid." "She already said I'm not thinking straight," Sarah said. "Exactly," the lawyer replied. "She will paint you as confused, unreliable. Right now, it's your word against hers, even with the texts. We need something undeniable. Something that proves unequivocally that she was in control of her faculties and that this was a long-term, calculated plan." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her head throbbing. I mean, she's going to claim she was moving money for your care. For the house. For expenses you couldn't see. We need to prove the intent to defraud. Can you get access to a computer? Her computer. After the call, Sarah went to the small office down the hall. For 10 years it had been Carol's room. Sarah had rarely entered. He found a laptop on the desk. She opened it. It too was password protected. This time there was no helpful note. Sarah's heart sank. But then she looked at the desk. He saw the mousepad. It was old, worn. It was a photo mousepad. A photo of her and Carol from their wedding day. Sarah smiled, a bitter, cold smile. How sentimental. She tried their wedding date again. Access denied. She looked closer at the desk. Taped to the side of the monitor was a small sticky note. It didn't have a password. It had a name and a date. Muffin, August 14th, 04. Muffin. Their first cat who had passed away years ago. The date he died. Sarah typed it in. Welcome, Carol. He was in. She felt like a spy in her own home. Her eyes, still adjusting, strained in the dimmer light of the office. She opened the web browser. The history was right there. Bank websites. Credit card websites. And a real estate site. She clicked the real estate link. The history was full of searches for one specific area. A town by a lake 4 hours north. The same lake Evelyn had mentioned in the texts. Carol had been browsing listings. Small cottages, starter homes, all in a price range that matched the amount Sarah calculated they had stolen. Then she went for the bank accounts. She logged into their joint account. Kate had been successful. A large red banner at the top of the page declared, "Account frozen. Contact branch for details." A surge of relief washed over Sarah. That at least was safe. But the text messages had mentioned moving money. Where had it gone? She saw another bank listed in Carol's bookmarks. A bank Sarah had never heard of. She clicked the link. The username was already saved. She tried the muffin password. Access granted. Sarah's blood ran cold. It was a savings account. It was in Carol's name only. And it held over $100,000. Sarah stared at the number. She looked at the transaction history. For 3 years, a steady stream of money. Small amounts at first, $300 here, $500 there. Household expenses. In the last 6 months the amounts had jumped. $5,000. $10,000. She had been accelerating the plan. Sarah did exactly as the lawyer instructed. She didn't touch anything. She took her phone, not Carol's, and she began to take pictures. She photographed the screen, the account number, the balance, the transaction history. She photographed the real estate searches. Then she went back to Carol's phone and one by one she screenshotted every single incriminating text message. She emailed every photo, every screenshot, to Mr. Harrison and to her sister. When she was done, she logged out of everything. She shut the laptop. She placed Carol's phone back on the bedside table, exactly as she had found it. She had spent her first day of sight becoming a detective. That evening, Kate returned. She brought groceries in a locked briefcase. "The account is frozen," Kate announced, her voice grim. The bank manager was very cooperative, especially after I explained. He said Carol had been in just last week, asking about the penalty for a full withdrawal. "She was going to do it," Sarah said. "As soon as I was in surgery or right after, before I recovered. She was going to empty it." "Well, she can't now," Kate said. "Did you find anything?" "Yes," Sarah said. She pointed to the office. "I found everything. The separate account. The lake houses. It's all there." Kate nodded, her expression hardening. "Good. Mr. Harrison called me. He agrees we have a strong case. But he's right. Carol will fight. She will call you crazy. She will paint you as a victim of post-surgical delusion." "So what do we do?" Sarah asked, sinking into the sofa. The exhaustion of the day, the emotional and physical strain, was catching up to her. Her eyes felt like they were full of sand. "We let her," Kate said, her voice surprisingly calm. "Mr. Harrison has an idea. We let her think she's still in control. We let her think you're the helpless, blind woman she's always counted on." "I don't understand," Sarah said. "She knows I saw her. She knows I kicked her out. But she doesn't know what you know," Kate said, leaning forward. "She doesn't know about the phone. She doesn't know about the bank account. She thinks this is just about the affair. She will come back not to apologize but to manage you, to gaslight you, to convince you that what you saw wasn't what you thought. And what am I supposed to do? Let her? The idea of being in the same room with Carol again made Sarah feel ill. Yes, Kate said. You let her. And you record her. Kate opened the briefcase. Inside, nestled in foam, was a small black object. It looked like a digital clock. This is a high-definition recorder. Audio and video, Kate explained. It's motion-activated. We'll put it on the mantelpiece right opposite the sofa. It will just look like a new clock. She won't even notice it. You want me to trap her? She trapped you, Kate retorted, her voice fierce. She trapped you in the dark for 10 years while she stole your life. This isn't a trap, Sarah. This is a light. It's time for everyone to see the truth, not just you. The plan was set. They positioned the clock. Kate stayed with her, sleeping in the guest room, but they agreed she would leave the next morning. Carol had to find Sarah alone. The next morning, as expected, Carol's car pulled into the driveway. Sarah, watching from the window, felt her stomach twist. I can't do this, she whispered. Yes, you can, Kate said, grabbing her coat. You are not the person she thinks you are. You are not blind. See her for who she is. I'll be at the diner down the street. Call me when she's gone. Kate slipped out the back door. Moments later, the front doorbell rang. Sarah took a deep breath. She walked to the door, her eyes focused, clear. She opened it. Carol stood on the doorstep. She had been crying, her eyes were puffy and red. She was holding a bouquet of roses. Sarah, she whispered, her voice breaking. Honey, can I please come in? We need to talk. You misunderstood everything. Sarah stared at the woman on her doorstep. Yesterday, this face had been a blurry memory. Today, it was the face of her tormentor, perfectly in focus. The puffy eyes, the downturned mouth, it was a performance. Sarah could see the strings. She stepped back, holding the door open. Come in, Carol. Her voice was flat. She hoped it sounded like defeat. Carol entered slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal. She placed the roses on the coffee table next to the doctor's eye drops. How are your eyes? Carol asked, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. Are you in pain? Can I get you anything? I'm fine, Sarah said. She sat on the sofa, directly in line with the new clock on the mantelpiece. The camera was recording. Sarah, I am so sorry, Carol began, sitting in the armchair opposite her. She leaned forward, her hands clasped. What you saw yesterday, it was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. A 3-year mistake? Sarah asked, testing the waters. Carol flinched, surprised Sarah knew the time frame. She must have assumed Evelyn told her after she fled. It wasn't like that, Carol insisted, her voice pleading. It was just loneliness. You were so distant after the accident. You were in your own world of darkness, and I was alone. Evelyn was just a friend. Yesterday, it was a goodbye. I swear. I was ending it. I was so happy about your surgery. I knew I had to end it for good. The lies were so smooth, so practiced. Sarah felt a cold admiration for the sheer audacity. He was trying to rewrite the narrative. She was making Sarah's blindness the cause and her own loneliness the tragic effect. You were ending it, Sarah repeated, her voice neutral. Yes. I swear on our life together, Carol said, the tears starting to flow again. She meant nothing, Sarah. You are my life. I was terrified. I was weak. But I never ever stopped loving you. And the beach trip? Sarah asked, watching her. The one you told me was a visit to your sister. Was that nothing, too? Carol's face paled. The photograph. She had forgotten the photograph. She stammered, that was. Evelyn was having a hard time. Her mother was sick. She needed a friend. But I lied because I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want you to feel left out. How considerate, Sarah said, the sarcasm sharp. Carol's eyes narrowed just slightly. The mask of the grieving wife slipped. She was sensing this wasn't going as planned. Don't be like this, Sarah, Carol said, her tone shifting from pleading to frustrated. You're seeing things for the first time. Everything is distorted. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly. You can't just throw away 15 years over one stupid mistake that you happen to see. The words hung in the air. The core of the problem, Sarah had seen. So if I hadn't seen it, Sarah asked, you would have just continued? No. Carol insisted a little too loudly. I told you it was over. I was going to tell you. When? Soon. When you were stronger. When your eyes were better. Sarah, please, she said, her voice softening again, becoming the caregiver Carol. You need me. This house. The world. It's all new to you. You don't even know how to use the new coffee machine. You don't know the new passwords for the bank accounts. How are you going to manage? There was the threat wrapped in a blanket of concern. You are helpless. You need me. The bank accounts, Sarah said, her heart picking up its pace. This was it. Yes, Carol said, seizing the opening. I've been handling everything, honey. All our finances. You know I'm good with it. I've been moving some money around. Into a high-yield savings account. For us. For our future. For your aftercare. A high-yield savings account, Sarah echoed. In your name. Carol's eyes widened. How did you know that? I'm guessing, Sarah lied. It seems like something you would do. To protect me. Carol recovered quickly. Yes, exactly. To protect our assets. I didn't want to bother you with the details. It was a surprise. For our retirement. $800,000 is a big surprise, Sarah said quietly. The color drained from Carol's face. This was not a guess. How? Carol whispered, her voice dropping. How do you know that number? I'm not as helpless as you think, Carol, Sarah said, her voice finally losing its flat, defeated tone. She stood up. I'm not as blind. Carol's demeanor changed instantly. The tears stopped. The mask of the penitent wife dissolved, revealing the cold, hard woman beneath. You went through my things, Carol hissed, standing up to face her. You blind fool, you went through my computer. I did, Sarah said, not backing down. I saw the account, Carol. I saw the real estate listings for the lake house. The one you and Evelyn were going to buy. I saw the messages. What she doesn't know can't hurt her. It's almost enough. You weren't protecting me. You were robbing me. Carol stared at her, her chest heaving. The performance was over. So what? Carol sneered. So what if I was? What did you expect? Did you expect me to just sit here in the dark with you for the rest of my life? I gave you 10 years, Sarah. I bathed you. I fed you. I read you your mail. I earned that money. I deserved a life. Something you couldn't give me. A life built on theft? Sarah shot back. On my parents' money? It was just sitting there. Carol screamed. You weren't using it. You couldn't even see it. I was managing it. And yes, I was going to leave. I was going to take Evelyn and I was going to start over because I deserved it. And you were going to leave me with nothing. I was going to leave you exactly as I found you, Carol spat. In the dark. You're the one who had to ruin it. You're the one who had to go and see. The hatred in her voice was so pure, so potent, it made Sarah recoil. This was the real Carol. This was the stranger she was married to. It's all there, Carol, Sarah said, her voice shaking but firm. The texts, the bank statements, the computer history. I have it all. Carol laughed. A short, ugly sound. You have nothing. It's my word against the word of a confused, hysterical woman who just had experimental brain surgery. Who do you think they'll believe? Me, the devoted wife who stood by you? Or you? You can't even prove I wrote those texts. You can't prove that money wasn't for us. You have no proof. Sarah looked at her. She looked at this woman, so confident in her own deceit. Then Sarah smiled. It was a small, cold smile. She pointed one steady finger at the mantelpiece. What's that? Carol asked, her eyes narrowing, confused. It's a clock, Sarah said. It's new. I bought it yesterday. He walked over to it. Carol watched, a sense of unease finally dawning on her face. It's a very special clock, Sarah said. She picked it up and turned it around, pointing the small, dark lens directly at Carol. It records video. And audio. It has been recording since the moment you walked through that door. Carol's face, the one Sarah had once loved, collapsed. The arrogance, the anger, the confidence, it all evaporated, replaced by the same raw, unfiltered panic Sarah had seen in her yesterday. The panic of being seen. It recorded you admitting to the affair, Sarah continued, her voice level. It recorded you admitting you were going to leave. It recorded you admitting you earned my money and deserved to take it. It recorded you calling me a blind fool. It recorded everything. Carol didn't speak. She just stared at the small black object in Sarah's hand. So you're right, Sarah said, walking to the phone. It is your word against mine. But I just happen to have a witness. She dialed her sister's number. Kate, you can come back now. And call Mr. Harrison. Tell him we have it. We have the confession. Carol made a sound, a low, strangled noise. She lunged not for Sarah but for the clock. Give me that. You can't. But Sarah was already moving, holding it out of her reach. Get out of my house, Carol. Get out. Or I will add assault to the list. Carol froze. She looked from the camera to Sarah's face. The face she had underestimated. Defeated, she backed away. Her entire body was trembling with rage and failure. She stormed to the front door, ripped it open, and screamed. It was a primal, frustrated sound. Then she was gone. Sarah stood in the silence, her hand still shaking as it held the clock. She had done it. She had seen the truth and she had captured it. The performance was over. The real battle was about to begin. The weeks that followed were a new kind of storm. The world, which Sarah was still learning to see, became a blur of legal offices, bank buildings, and sterile meeting rooms. The visual strain was immense. Her headaches were constant, and the doctor urged her to rest her eyes. But Sarah couldn't rest. Not yet. Kate was her shadow, her driver, her protector. She helped Sarah navigate the bright, overwhelming world of grocery stores, traffic lights, and most importantly, the complex paperwork of her own life. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, was astounded by the evidence. I have been doing this for 30 years, Sarah, he said after watching the footage from the clock. And I have never seen such a clear-cut case of calculated, malicious fraud. Her confession it's perfect. She didn't just admit to the theft. She provided the motive, the method, and a stunning lack of remorse. Carol, it turned out, did not go quietly. The first letter from her lawyer arrived a week later. It was full of accusations. It claimed Sarah was mentally incompetent due to the experimental surgery. It claimed Sarah had been abusive. It claimed Carol had moved the money into a separate account to protect it from Sarah's erratic spending, which was laughable as Sarah hadn't been able to spend a dime on her own in 10 years. It's noise, Mr. Harrison said, tossing the letter onto his desk. She is throwing everything at the wall, hoping something will stick. She doesn't know what we have. She thinks she's trying to discredit a confused woman. She has no idea she's fighting a video recording of her own confession. The next battle was Evelyn. Sarah and Kate were in their front yard. Sarah was marveling at the simple, sharp green of a blade of grass when Evelyn approached. She walked across the lawn, her head down, her hands clasped. She looked smaller, diminished. Sarah, Evelyn said, her voice quiet. Can I talk to you? Please. Kate stepped forward. I don't think you have anything to say. Please, Evelyn repeated, looking at Sarah. Her eyes were red. I had no idea. About the money. I swear. I loved her. I thought she loved me. But she was just using me too. Using you? Sarah asked, her voice cold. You were in my house. You ate my food. You lied to my face. I know. Evelyn cried, the tears coming now. I know. And I will never forgive myself. But the money, that was all her. When you got your sight back and it all fell apart, I found out what she was doing. She wasn't just leaving you, she was leaving me. She had another plan, one that didn't involve either of us. That lake house, it wasn't for us. It was for her. Sarah and Kate exchanged a look. This was a new twist. She's not a good person, Evelyn stammered. And I was weak. I was lonely and I let her tell me what I wanted to hear. I found this. Evelyn held out her phone. On the screen was another bank account, one Sarah hadn't found. A third account also in Carol's name at an offshore bank. It had thousands of dollars in it. She was skimming from the account she was building, Evelyn said. She was lying to me about how much we had. She was building a nest egg for herself. She was going to leave us both. Sarah looked at the phone, then at Evelyn's pathetic, tear-stained face. She felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just emptiness. Give that to my lawyer, Sarah said. Send him the screenshots. Maybe it will help you, maybe it won't. But don't come back here. Evelyn nodded, defeated. She is trying to sell the story, Sarah. To the news. That you're crazy. That the surgery failed and you're imagining all of it. She's desperate. Let her, Sarah said, turning away. The truth is the truth. I can see it now. The betrayal was deeper than she thought. It wasn't a triangle. It was just Carol at the center of a web of lies, manipulating everyone, including her own partner in crime. The day of the deposition arrived. They sat in a sterile conference room. Sarah, Kate, and Mr. Harrison on one side of a long, polished table. Carol and her lawyer on the other. Carol looked terrible. She was thin, pale, and her eyes, which had once held such confidence, were dark and hunted. She stared at Sarah, her expression a mix of pure hatred and desperation. Carol's lawyer began. He followed the script from the letter, painting Sarah as the unstable victim of a surgery gone wrong. Mrs. Miller, he began, isn't it true that since your surgery you have experienced headaches, dizziness, and visual hallucinations? I have experienced headaches, Sarah replied calmly. From the strain. I have not had hallucinations. But you are confused? The world is new to you? It must be very disorienting. It is disorienting, Sarah agreed. But it is not confusing. Things are in fact clearer than they have ever been. They went on like this for an hour. Carol's lawyer tried to paint her as a devoted wife. Carol answered his questions, weeping on cue, describing the burden of the last 10 years, the love she had for her unwell wife. And this money, her lawyer said, this account, this was for her care, was it not? You were saving it for her to protect it. Yes, Carol sobbed. I was only ever protecting her. I would never steal from Sarah. I love her. Mr. Harrison leaned forward. That's enough. He placed a small laptop on the table and turned it to face Carol and her lawyer. We have a final piece of evidence we'd like to submit, Mr. Harrison said. He pressed play. The video began. The screen showed their living room from the mantelpiece. It showed Carol walking in with roses. Carol's lawyer scoffed. It's footage of a living room? Just wait, Mr. Harrison said. And then they watched. They watched Carol's entire performance. They heard her plead. They heard her lies about the affair being over. They heard her talk about the bank accounts. And then they heard Sarah confront her. Carol's face in the conference room turned to ash. She was watching herself, her mask of lies being ripped away. On the screen, the video, Carol's face turned hard. So what? Her voice sneered from the speakers. What did you expect? I gave you 10 years, Sarah. I earned that money. I deserved a life. Carol's lawyer stared at the screen, his mouth open. They watched the entire unedited confession. They watched her admit to the theft, the plan, the resentment. They watched her call her wife a blind fool. When the video ended, Mr. Harrison shut the laptop. The silence in the room was absolute. Carol's lawyer slowly took off his glasses. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked at his client with utter contempt. We will need a moment, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. He and a non-responsive, gray-faced Carol left the room. Well, Mr. Harrison said, straightening his tie. I believe that settles that. When Carol and her lawyer returned 15 minutes later, their entire demeanor had changed. The fight was gone. My client, her lawyer said, his voice flat and formal, is prepared to accept a settlement. She will agree to the divorce. She will make no claims on the house, the assets, or any of Sarah's accounts. She will also return every cent that was transferred. And, Mr. Harrison prompted. And, the lawyer sighed. In exchange, Mrs. Miller agrees not to pursue criminal charges for fraud. Sarah looked at Carol. Carol wouldn't meet her gaze. She was staring at the polished table, a completely broken woman. Sarah thought about it. She could send her to jail. She deserved it. But, she looked at Mr. Harrison, then at Kate. She was tired. She was so tired of this. She wanted her life back. Or rather, she wanted to start her new one. On one condition, Sarah said, her voice clear and strong. Carol looked up, her eyes wide with fear. You admit it, Sarah said. Right now. I want to hear you say it, without the lawyers, without the performance. Why did you do it? Carol's lawyer started to object, but Carol held up a shaking hand. She looked at Sarah. Her eyes were dead. Because I hated you, Carol whispered. What? I hated you, she repeated, her voice stronger. I hated you for the accident. I hated you for being blind. I hated you for making me your servant. You were a burden. And I was trapped. And I wanted you to pay for it. I wanted you to pay for my lost years. There was the truth. Uglier, deeper, and more painful than the affair or even the money. It was hatred. Sarah nodded slowly. The last piece of her old life clicked into place. And then it shattered. All right, Sarah said to Mr. Harrison. We have a deal. Get her to sign the papers. I'm done. I never want to see her face again. The divorce was finalized in record time. The agreement was signed, the papers filed. Carol and her lawyer did not contest a single point. The video file, which Mr. Harrison kept in a secure digital vault, was a weapon of mutually assured destruction. If Carol ever stepped out of line, Sarah had only to send that file to the district attorney. The money, all $100,000, plus the extra funds from the secret offshore account that Evelyn had revealed, was wired back into Sarah's account within 24 hours. Carol, it seemed, had to liquidate every asset she had, including her car, to pay it back. Sarah watched from her living room window as a moving truck pulled up to Evelyn's house. Evelyn was leaving. She packed her things alone, loading boxes into the truck. She looked defeated. A few days later, a for sale sign went up on Evelyn's lawn. And what of Carol? Kate heard through the grapevine that she had left town disgraced. She had lost her partner, she had lost her money, and she had lost her home. She had, in the end, become the very thing she had accused Sarah of being, helpless and with nothing. Sarah found she felt no satisfaction in this. There was no joy in victory, only a profound, bone-deep weariness, and the relief of a long fever finally breaking. The house was quiet. Too quiet. For the first time, Sarah was truly alone. Alone and learning to see. Her new life began in small, hesitant steps. The world was still a sensory assault. Bright sunlight was painful. Reading for more than a few minutes made her head spin. She had to learn the simple things all over again. She had to learn how to drive. How to use a computer for something other than spying. How to shop for her own groceries, to pick out a red apple from a green one. A task that seemed miraculously simple and yet to her was a profound joy. She spent hours just looking at things. She sat in her backyard, the path to Evelyn's house already growing over, and watched a bee move from one rose to another. She saw the intricate, perfect geometry of its wings. She went to an art museum. She stood in front of a painting for an hour, just absorbing the colors, the brushstrokes. She had been read about art, but to see it, it was a spiritual experience. And she looked at faces. She learned to read them again. She had been an expert at reading voices, detecting the slightest shift in tone, the tremor of a lie, the warmth of a genuine smile. But she had been wrong. She had heard Carol's voice as loving, when it was calculating. She had heard Evelyn's as kind, when it was conspiring. Her ears had lied. Now she trusted her eyes. Her eyes had shown her the truth in one brutal, crystal-clear moment. She had to clean the house. It was a form of therapy. She went through every room, purging the life that had been a lie. She took down the photographs on the mantelpiece, the beach trip, the wedding photo. She packed away all of Carol's clothes, her books, her things, and donated them. She found the blue sofa, the one she had thought was gray, was stained. She saw the dust she had never known about. She saw the neglect. For 10 years, Carol had been the caregiver. But the house was dingy. It had been a set, a stage, and Carol hadn't bothered to keep it clean, because the audience couldn't see the dirt. Sarah hired painters. She chose the color herself, a bright, warm yellow for the kitchen. She bought a new sofa, a deep green one. She threw out the muffin mouse pad. She was not just redecorating, she was reclaiming. She was building a home she could see, a life that was honest. One afternoon, her sister Kate stopped by. Sarah was in the living room, sketching in a notebook. "What's this?" Kate asked, picking it up. "I don't know," Sarah said, shy. I like watching the way the light hits the vase. I'm trying to capture it." The sketch was clumsy, amateurish. But it was hers. "It's beautiful, Sarah," Kate said, and her voice was thick with real, true emotion. "I'm thinking of taking a class," Sarah said. "An art class. Or maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll travel. I want to see the ocean. Really see it. Not just hear Carol describe it." "You should do both," Kate said, sitting beside her on the new green sofa. You can do anything. The house was no longer a prison. It was a starting point. But the healing was not linear. There were nights. Nights when she would wake up, her heart pounding, and for a moment she would forget. She would reach for the light, and when she turned it on, the brightness would shock her. And there were moments of doubt. The betrayal had left a scar, a deep, jagged one. She found herself wary of new people. She found herself analyzing every smile, every kind word, searching for the lie beneath. How do you trust anyone again? She asked Kate one evening. Kate was quiet for a moment. I don't know, she said honestly. I guess. You start with yourself. You trust your eyes. You trust what you see. You saw the truth, Sarah. It was horrible. But you saw it. And you survived it. You're stronger than you know. Sarah held on to that. She had survived. She had to see the doctor for her 6-week checkup. Your eyes are healing beautifully, he said, shining a light, the same one that had once been just a disembodied voice. No inflammation. Your brain is adapting faster than I've ever seen. You're a remarkable case, Sarah. I have to thank you, doctor, Sarah said. You were there. You saw what happened. The doctor's kind face was full of empathy. I did. And I am so profoundly sorry that your first sight was one of such cruelty. Don't be, Sarah said, and she found that she meant it. You gave me the truth. For 10 years I lived in a comfortable, happy lie. You gave me a painful, horrible truth. And I would choose the truth every single time. You didn't just give me my sight, doctor. You gave me my life back. He smiled. So what will you do with it? This new life. Sarah smiled back, a real, genuine smile, one that reached her new, clear eyes. I think, she said, I'm going to go see a sunset. And this time I'll see it for myself. The for sale sign on Evelyn's lawn was soon replaced by a sold sign. A new family moved in, a young couple with a small child. Sarah watched them from her window, saw them playing in the yard, and felt nothing. They were just neighbors. The dark path that had connected the two houses was already disappearing, swallowed by new grass. Sarah's life began to take on a new shape, one defined by her own choices, her own vision. She enrolled in the art class. She was the oldest student there, surrounded by young people with natural talent. She was clumsy. Her hand, so accustomed to knowing the world by touch, struggled to translate the three-dimensional world onto a two-dimensional piece of paper. Her first attempts were childlike, the proportions all wrong, the colors muddy. Don't try so hard to draw what you think a tree looks like, the instructor, a woman with kind eyes and paint-stained hands, told her. See it. See the shapes. See the light. See the negative space around it. Negative space. The space around things. Sarah had lived in negative space. She had been the space around which Carol and Evelyn lived their lives. She began to paint. She was drawn to bright, bold colors. Her paintings were not technically good, but they were full of emotion. They were her way of processing. She painted a canvas that was just a swirl of angry reds and dark purples. That was the betrayal. She painted one that was a small, bright yellow dot in a sea of black. That was the hope she had carried. She also learned to be alone. For 15 years she had been part you of Sarah and Carol. Now she was just Sarah. She had to relearn her own house. One day, while cleaning out the hall closet, a space Carol had always organized, Sarah's hand brushed against a loose floorboard. Curious, she pulled at it. It came up. Underneath, in the dark, dusty space, was a small, locked metal box. Her heart hammered. More secrets. She felt a wave of nausea. She thought she was done with this. She took the box to the kitchen. It was a simple lock. She found a small screwdriver and, with a twist, forced it open. It wasn't full of money. It wasn't full of letters. It was full of her. Inside were photographs, dozens of them from before her accident. Sarah smiling on a boat. Sarah laughing at a party. Her driver's license, which she had thought was lost. Her passport long expired. And at the bottom, a single folded document. It was a medical report. From after her accident. She read it. It was from a specialist she had seen 8 years ago. She remembered the visit. Carol had been there holding her hand. The specialist, according to Carol, had been grim. He had said the damage was catastrophic and irreversible. But that is not what the report said. The report read, "The nerve damage is significant, but the patient may be a candidate for emerging neurodegenerative therapies in the coming years. We recommend follow-up appointments every 6 months to monitor for new trial availabilities. Sarah stared at the words. Every 6 months. She had never had a follow-up appointment. Carol had told her the doctor said it was hopeless. She dropped the document. Carol hadn't just used her blindness. She had enforced it. For 8 years there had been a chance, a sliver of hope, and Carol had hidden it. She had buried it under the floor along with Sarah's old life. She hadn't wanted her caregiver role to be temporary. She hadn't wanted the problem to be solved. She had actively, deliberately kept Sarah in the dark. This, Sarah realized, was the true final betrayal. It was not the kiss. It was not the money. It was the theft of time. The theft of hope. She should have been furious. She should have been destroyed. Instead, she felt a profound, cold calm. She picked up the box and the report. She walked to the fireplace, the one she had never used. She laid the report and the old photographs inside. She lit a match. She watched the paper curl and blacken. She watched the smiling face of her younger self. The face Carol had tried to bury turned to ash. He was not that person. She was not the victim under the floorboards. She was the woman who had clawed her way back. She was letting go. She was burning the last vestiges of the life Carol had curated. A month later, Sarah packed a bag. It was the first time she had ever packed for herself. She put her passport, the new one, her wallet and her sketchbook inside. She drove herself to the airport. She bought a ticket. She flew to the coast. She checked into a small hotel with a balcony overlooking the ocean. That evening she walked down to the beach, her bare feet sinking into the cool, damp sand. She remembered Carol's description. It's big, honey. And blue. And the waves are loud. It was so much more. She saw the color. It wasn't just blue. It was 100 different blues. Deep navy, bright turquoise, silvery gray. She saw the white foam, intricate as lace, as the waves broke. And the sunset. She sat on the sand and watched. It was the first sunset she had truly seen in over a decade. Carol had described it. It's a deep orange tonight. It was fire. It was molten gold and streaks of pink and a purple so deep it was almost black. It wasn't just a color. It was all of them bleeding into one another, changing every second. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She was not seeing it through Carol's words. She was not seeing it in spite of Carol. She was just seeing. She sat there for hours, long after the sun had disappeared, until the sky was filled with stars, sharp, brilliant pinpricks of light in the infinite black. She had forgotten about the stars. Tears streamed down her face. But they were not tears of pain. They were not tears of betrayal or anger. They were the tears of a woman who had been given the world back. A world more beautiful and more terrible and more real than she had ever known. She had been blind. But now, in every sense of the word, she could see. Life went on. The world did not stop for Sarah's recovery, so she learned to join it. The months turned into a year. Sarah's new life took on a comfortable, quiet rhythm. Her house, once a dark map of familiar textures, was now a bright, open space filled with her own paintings. They were much better now. She had found a talent she never knew she possessed. The bright yellows and greens had replaced the angry reds. She continued to travel. She saw the mountains, their rocky gray peaks sharp against a blue sky. She saw a forest in autumn, a breathtaking explosion of red and orange. She was filling her mind, her soul, with a library of new images, replacing the old, dark memories. She still had her sister Kate. Their bond, always strong, was now unbreakable. They met for lunch every week. Kate had been her rock, her champion, and now she was simply her sister, her best friend. One day, while at a small local art fair where she was displaying one of her own paintings, a landscape of the sunset over the ocean, a man stopped at her booth. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with a kind, weathered face and a gentle smile. He looked at her painting for a long time. He said, this is full of feeling. The colors, it's as if you're seeing it for the first time. Sarah smiled. In a way I was. His name was Robert. He was a retired architect who now spent his time woodworking. They talked for an hour not about art but about wood and light and the feel of the sun. He didn't ask her any deep, prying questions. He asked her if she would like to get coffee. Sarah paused. The old fear, the scar of betrayal, tightened in her chest. Trust. It was still so hard. Robert, as if sensing her hesitation, just smiled. Or not. Either way, you have a wonderful gift. It was a pleasure to meet you. He started to walk away. Wait, Sarah said, her voice surprising her. Coffee. That would be nice. It was not a romance. It was not a whirlwind. It was slow. It was coffee, then a walk in the park, then a visit to a museum. Robert was kind, he was patient, and he was honest. He had his own stories, his own scars. He listened to her story. Not the whole, sortable tale, but the essence of it. I was blind for a long time, she told him. And when I got my sight back, I learned that the world I thought I knew was a lie. I'm still learning to trust what I see. Robert nodded, his gaze steady. The good thing is, he said, you can see it. You just have to decide what's worth looking at. Sarah learned to trust again. Not the blind, desperate trust she had given Carol, but a new, cautious, seeing trust. A trust that was earned, not demanded. She was happy. It was a quiet, steady happiness. A happiness she had built for herself, plank by plank. 2 years after the surgery, she was in her garden. She was planting her own roses, yellow ones. Her hands, which had once only felt the dirt, could now see the rich, dark color of the soil. A letter arrived in the mail. It was a plain white envelope, no return address. She opened it. It was a single-page, handwritten note. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Carol's. Sir, I am in a facility. I am getting help. I know you will probably burn this and you should. I wanted to say sorry. Not the way I said it before. I know what I did. I was not just a liar. I was a monster. I was so full of hate for myself, for my life, and I took it out on you. I stole your money, but I also stole your time. I am paying for it. I have nothing. I have no one. I am alone in a room and I have to look at myself every day. It is a prison of my own making. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I will never have that, and I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I know the truth. I hope you are happy. I hope you are seeing all the beautiful things you missed. Sarah read the letter twice. She felt a faint echo of the old pain, a ghost of the life she had lost. But it was distant. It was like looking at a photograph of a stranger. She walked to her fireplace. She looked at the note. She thought about burning it just as she had burned the other remnants of her past. Instead, she folded it. She put it in a drawer in the very back under her art supplies. It was a part of her story. It was the proof of the darkness that had come before the light. She went back outside into her garden. The sun was warm on her face. Robert was coming over soon. They were going to try a new recipe for dinner. She looked at the bright yellow rosebud, its petals still tightly furled. She touched it, feeling the soft, velvety texture and at the same time seeing the brilliant, sharp color. Her senses were in harmony. She was not Sarah the blind woman. She was not Sarah the victim. She was just Sarah. And for the first time in her entire life, her vision was perfect.